There's a major problem destroying PlayStation 5 consoles. Although these were originally designed to be set up either vertically or horizontally, the vertical orientation in particular is quite problematic. To understand this issue, we first need to cover the cooling system of the PS5. Just like you first need to follow this channel, because that'd be great. This console uses liquid metal instead of thermal paste in its cooling assembly to transfer heat from the processor to the heatsink more efficiently. The console does have a seal for the liquid metal, but it seems that in the vertical orientation, the metal is able to eventually spill out onto the motherboard. And because liquid metal is very conductive, it can very easily short circuit and fry your console. So if you have a PS5, I recommend keeping it in the horizontal position. So when the PlayStation 5 first came out, everybody was surprised that Sony was using liquid metal as the thermal paste material, or whatever you want to call it, because this is a very problematic substance to work with. In custom computer building, for instance, people usually don't even use this thing just because of how hard it is to work with. Not to mention, unlike the normal thermal paste, most thermal paste isn't really conductive, so if some would spill onto your motherboard, which would be a lot harder because the substance is just very different, it's sort of like toothpaste, so it's not really gonna run down your motherboard or anything like that. It just sort of globs together, whereas this thing is very conductive and it will flow like a liquid, and it can very easily short circuit your motherboard. And the thing is, your console then is pretty much just gonna be dead. Most likely no one's gonna be fixing it, because fixing it will probably be more expensive than to just buy or make a whole new console, unfortunately. Not to mention, if somebody did try to fix it, again, this is liquid metal, which makes everything a lot harder, because while you open up the console and you attempt to fix it, you have to make sure the liquid metal stays in its place. If you get it spilled all over the motherboard, that's a gigantic issue. It's very painful to clean it off. So this is sort of the reason why custom PC builders like me usually don't use this, because it's just very problematic. You really need to know what you're doing. And Sony, in this case, to be fair, it seems that they did take many precautions. I mean, if you just look at this sort of shielding over here to keep the liquid metal in here, the fact is just that these consoles are mainly set up vertically. That's sort of how the PlayStation 5 design goes. It sort of makes you want to set it up vertically anyway. And it seems that if it's just set up for such a long period of time, the liquid metal is able to make it through onto the motherboard, which is something that is obviously pretty hard to test for. This is why this news only came out about a few weeks ago. Because the thing is, you just can't know. You know, the consoles were totally fine. If you got a new PS5 and you set it up vertically, it's going to be totally fine for a long time until liquid metal is actually able to make it through. So if you have a PS5, just set it up horizontally so you just never have to worry about this ever.